Welcome back, Fortune friends. We're on deck number 6. We're halfway through this box. Let's crack it open and see what we have today. All right. Today, we've got Shadows, Brobnar, and Dis. We've got Aaron, son of Downstairs Chapel. It's a pretty funny name. Purple Archon. Looks like a kind of a ship of some kind. Okay, let's have a look-see. We got Brobnar in this one, so we might be looking at a little bit of a lower SAS here, but we had one that was kind of decent before, so let's see if we can get one that's even better than that. Okay, we have the Archon card down, and we're starting off with Shadows. We've got Mac the Knife, a 3-power creature with elusive, and you may use Mac the Knife as if it belonged to the active house. As an action, you deal 1 damage to a creature. If this damage destroys that creature, gain 1 amber. So basically, he's like one of the Vindas, but he can be used with any house. Really good card, and you like the as elusive. Great rare to start with. We have the Key of Darkness, an action card with Forge, a key at +6 current cost. If your opponent has no amber, forge a key at +2 current cost instead. I've personally never gotten this card to work, but if we have a lot of steel in this deck, we might be able to pull it off for that 8 cost key potentially. So we'll hope for that. We've got the Skeleton Key artifact, an action card, an artifact with action. A friendly creature captures 1 amber. Okay. Hidden Stash, action card with an amber pip. Play, archive a card. Good for some efficiency there. Umbra, 2-power creature with skirmish and fight, steal 1. I like that card a lot. Good for some stealing. And we got Pestering Blow, action card with an amber pip. Deal 1 damage to a creature and enrage it. Good to take care of some of those problematic reapers. We have Mug, an action card with an amber pip. Play, move 1 amber from a creature to your pool. Deal 2 damage to that creature. We've got a second Mug. We've got Javinda. Kind of the lesser of that rare we got, Mac the Knife. The 2-power creature with elusive, and reap, deal 1 damage to a creature. If this damage destroys that creature, steal 1 amber. Inky Gloom, action card with play. Your opponent cannot use creatures to reap on their next turn. Hawk, an action card with an amber pip. Destroy an artifact. If you do, gain 1 amber. Need some more artifact control than that, but we don't have more copies. Avinda, a 4-power creature with reap, deal 1 damage to a creature. If this damage destroys that creature, your opponent discards a random card from their hand. Doesn't have elusive, but has more power at least, so good for some disruption. Moving on to Dis, we've got Obsidian Forge, an artifact with an amber pip. Action, sacrifice any number of friendly creatures. Then you may forge a key at +6 current cost, reduced by 1 amber for each creature sacrificed this way. If you do, destroy Obsidian Forge. Well, of course, in a deck with this, we would like to see a high creature count, but already in that Shadows, I don't think we saw too many creatures. So we're going to see if we can find some good destroyed effects, because you can actually use this to pop off destroyed effects too. So it might be another use for this card. The Evil Eye, action card with an amber pip. Play, keys cost +3 amber during your opponent's next turn. And then we got a second Evil Eye. And we have Malison, a 5-power creature with fight. You may move an enemy creature anywhere in its controller's battle line. Then, if it's on a flank, it captures 1 amber from its own side. Great for breaking up some of those taunt creatures, or maybe some deploy effects. Got 2 of that. We have Lilithal, a creature with 5 power and fight, reap, capture 1 amber. Nice annoying card. And we have 2 of that. Inspector, 2-power creature with destroyed, purge a random card from your opponent's hand. Nice disruption. Harbinger of Doom, a 2-power creature with 3 armor. It's got destroyed, destroy each creature. Good to have a board wipe for sure. Always nice to have one of those. Draining Touch is an action card with no amber pip. Play, destroy a creature with no amber on it. Okay. We got 2 of those. Nice. Good for some creature destruction here. Binding Irons is an action card with your opponent gains 3 chains. More disruption. Pretty disruptive Dis House so far. Going on to Brobnar, we have the upgrade with an Amber Pip, Cyber Giant Rig. This creature gains, at the end of your turn, this creature loses 1 power counter, loses a +1 power counter. And when you play it, fully heal this creature and give it a +1 power counter for each damage healed. Well, of course, with this, we would like to see a pretty big creature, something giant, obviously, that we would like to have a lot of damage before we played this card on it. So let's look for that. We've got the Artifact Ragborg with an Amber Pip. After a creature reaps, if it is the first time a creature has reaped this turn, deal 2 damage to it. So this is kind of some anti-synergy with a few of our cards in Shadows and Disc that had reap effects. We got 2 of those. So that's really if we want to just fight with this deck. We'll see. Power of Fire is an action card. Sacrifice a friendly creature. If you do, each player loses Amber equal to half that creature's power, rounding them the loss, and you gain 1 chain. Not the most powerful Amber control card, but it might come in clutch, potentially, depending on what creatures we have. Overrun is an action card with an Amber Pip. Play, if 3 or more enemy creatures have been destroyed this turn, your opponent loses 2 Amber. So we need to see a lot of creatures to fight with. We haven't seen very many creatures yet so far in this Brobnar, or really any at all. Yeah, we haven't seen a single creature yet in this Brobnar, so I'm hoping we can find some creatures to fight with, or at least a board wipe. Here we go. We got Gravel Guts, a 5-power creature with, after an enemy creature is destroyed fighting Gravel Guts, give him 2 +1 power counters. So if he's constantly fighting 2-power creatures, then he'll never take any damage, really. So that's pretty cool. I like some Brobnars with survivability, at least. Got Flamethrower, an artifact with action. Deal 1 damage to a creature with 1 damage splash. I like having some spot damage like that, especially for some smaller creatures. Blood Money is an action card with play. Place 2 Amber from the common supply on an enemy creature. Be really good if we had some nice Brobnar guys to fight. Like Roke, a 5-power creature with fight. Your opponent loses 1 Amber. Nice to see in multiples. We don't have in multiples. We have Berserker Slam, which isn't a bad card. Action card with an Amber Pip. Play, deal 4 damage to a flank creature. If this damage destroys that creature, its controller loses 1 Amber. Okay, so we have another card that kind of reduces Amber. Nice. We got Barn Raising, an action card with action or play. For the remainder of the turn, your opponent loses 1 Amber each time a friendly creature fights. Really good if we had more Brobnar creatures to fight with. We do have Alaka, 4-power creature with, if you have used a creature to fight this turn, Alaka enters play ready. Alright, so we're going to take a look at this deck. Not the most exciting out of my first impression, but maybe we'll find something here when we do the counts. And we're back. We have separated out the cards. Let's do our creature count first. Didn't seem like a lot. Let's see how many we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Definitely on the far lower end of creatures in this deck. Let's do our Amber on the cards. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, 14 Amber. Pretty average to low numbers on those two. Let's go ahead and look at Amber Control first. So Amber Control. Off the top of my head, in our Amber cards, do we have Amber Control? So we have these 2 Evil Eyes, so that's 2 things. And we have Berserker Slam, so that's a 3rd. That makes them lose Amber. 3 so far. And here we have Barn Raising. It requires creatures to fight. We have a fair few fights in this deck, though. So I'll count that as 1. So that's 4. Overrun's kind of difficult, so I'll say 4.5. And I'll say 5.5 for Power of Fire. 6.5. And I think that's it in there. 6.5 so far. In the creatures, do we have anything that helps us with Amber Control? That fights and steals 1, so 7.5. It has a very difficult condition. You have to deal 1 damage to destroy a creature. So we'll say half for that, so we're up to 8. 9, 10, It captures one from its own side when he fights. So we'll say 11, 12, 13. Okay, so we have 13 different cards that can... 13 different... 13 as far as power goes, as far as capturing goes, or amber control goes. So that's actually pretty good. That's a lot of amber control that I probably wouldn't have seen before. Okay, moving on to artifact control. I think we're going to keep that pretty quick because I think just like in previous decks, all we've got is the one card that artifact controls, and that's the Hawk. So 1 for that. Then we're moving on to creature control, which I think this deck has quite a bit of creature control. We'll say since this one deals only 1 damage, we'll call it half. And then this one deals 1 damage, so we'll call that half as well. And 1 damage here. So we'll say 1.5 for those 3. This is a board wipe, so we'll say maybe... Yeah, we'll count that as 1. So 2.5. 2.5 for creature control so far. 3.5, 4.5, 5 since it's 1 damage only. 5. 6, 7, 8. And in here, we've got it controls creatures, prevents them from reaping. So 9, 10, 11, 1 and 1 splash. We'll say 12. So 12, maybe a generous 12. So, wow, I mean, those are actually pretty good numbers, having 13 power as far as amber control goes and 12 power as far as creature control goes. Granted, I think the amber control count, the expected amber count and the creature count are what really shape the SAS score. So, bearing that in mind, we have pretty good amber control and creature control. As far as efficiency goes, I don't think we have much. I think this hidden stash is the one thing that kind of lets us speed up our deck at all. I don't think anything else really increases our speed very well. None of our creatures really let us draw or archive or anything like that. So I guess we'll just set our efficiency at 1. We get 1 chain here though, so we get to archive a card and get a chain. So essentially our efficiency is at 0 then, right? Is the main problem. So yeah, 0 for our efficiency. And then going to recursion, I don't think this deck has anything that recurs cards from the discard pile. I think that recursion will be 0 as well, unfortunately. Yeah. Nothing that I can see off the top of my head that lets us get anything back. So that's a 0 recursion, which is unfortunate. Since we have so few creatures, it'd be nice to bring something back. And then the last thing was disruption. We should have quite a bit of disruption in this deck. Let's see. We've got... your opponent cannot use creatures to... That's more creature control. So this is disruption. 3 chains, so that's 1. I think that was all here. And then here, see that it enrages it. So we'll count that as half. That's still creature control though, so we won't count that. So 1 so far, that's direct disruption on our opponent's hand. And then in the creatures, do we have any disruption? Yeah, this is 1, so we have 2. Moving enemy creatures in the controller battle line could be disruptive if it moves a taunt around. So we'll say 1 for both of these. We'll say 3. 3 for disruption. Okay. So looking at this overall, it's going to be pretty obvious. I don't think this is the best deck in the world. I might put this somewhere in the... If I was generous, I'd put it in the 60s, but I don't think it's going to be in the 60s. Maybe low 60s to mid 50s, somewhere in there. I'm going to say 56. I'm going to say it's a 56. It has some things, but I don't know that it's the best. I mean, for one thing, we can use that Obsidian Forge if we have it out to destroy our Harbinger of Doom. So that's like a pretty reliable board wipe. So even though we have a small number of creatures, we can control the board pretty well. And considering that we have those artifacts that damage the first Reap, and we only have, let's see, 1 Reap, 2 Reaps, and these guys can fight. This will foreseeably fight. So a lot of these things want to fight anyway. This could fight and destroy itself. These 3 want to fight. So we could fight with a lot, but then again, we're not getting Amber that way, right? And we only have 14 Amber on the cards in our deck, so we'd like to Reap at least some of the time, especially if our opponent has a lot of Amber control. So we may or may not play one or both of those Ragwargs artifacts. So that's another thing to consider too. There's a lot of anti-synergy with kind of our creatures not having very many Brobnars. For one thing, we only have 3 Brobnar creatures. So I think that's going to put this deck in the mid, maybe even low 50s. But I'm going to stick with what I said. I'm going to say 56. And I'll see you at my desktop, and we'll find out for sure.
All right, welcome back to my desktop. I have the link copied, and I'll paste it in here. Like I said, that deck, it had a few synergies, but most of it was anti-synergy. And again, it had a Brobnar with only 3 creatures. So as we thought, the Brobnar would probably be holding that deck back. But then again, the disc did have a few creatures that wanted to fight, so I think there's some positive there. But other than that, I don't think it was the best deck overall. So let's see what we got. I guess at 56, go ahead and make your guesses now. Here we go. 55. I was 1 off. That was what that was my that was pretty good. That was a pretty good guess. So looking at it now, we have 51 base arc. We have 4 synergy, 1 anti-synergy, and -1 meta. Because we only have 1 artifact control and nothing else with the meta. So as far as Amber control goes, everything that we talked about with the Amber control is there. The Mug, I guess, is also a little bit of Amber control, just because it moves Amber from one creature to another, so we can get rid of an Amber on one of our creatures. But we didn't have a lot of capturing. We have the Lilithals, and we have the Skeleton Key, and maybe some other things, but that's pretty much it. Malison captures 1 from their own side, so not that. But yeah, we have a decent amount of expected Amber, but we have things that remove it because we have that Power of Fire that reduces both players' Amber. So not a super large, reliable amount of Amber. We have just the Hawk again. Creature control, like we said, was pretty good, but not the best. On paper, our Amber control and our creature control look like they'd be good, but nothing really synergizes super well in this deck. And we had a little bit of efficiency, but then the Power of Fire, as we thought, takes it away. Hidden Stash gives us more efficiency than it's taken away, so we still have a net positive efficiency, but not really much to write home about. And our effective power on our board is really low because of that Harbinger of Doom reducing it by 10 and the Power of Fire again. So overall, not a great synergy there. But it's important whenever you would see a deck like this to, if you're doing a sealed and you get this deck, what are you gonna do? What's your goal here, right? And we have a lot of things that, especially these 2 Ragwargs, they really stood out to me. Really punishing decks that want to Reap a lot. So, obviously we need to Reap in this deck, but focusing mostly on controlling your opponent's board would probably be what this deck wants to do, right? Focusing on taking care of their creatures with the really powerful action cards, and then fighting a bunch with your Lilithals, your 5 power creatures you have. You have 4 5 power creatures in your disc here. And then you have this Harbinger that, if you want to destroy the board, it can fight as well. Inspector can fight. And then when you're not fighting, you can also Reap. Alternatively, you could even have the Inspector Reap and then have your own Ragwarg destroy the Inspector. So you get Amber and you also get the Destroyed ability at the same time. That's pretty good. But then you have a lot of things that just deal damage to creatures. You have this Cybergiant Rig that makes a creature really strong, depending on how much damage it takes. We don't have a huge creature. We have 5 power creatures, but the Gravel Guts could potentially get really big and then, get damaged, and then he'd be a great target for the Cybergiant Rig. So that's kind of the thing to think about whenever you get a sealed deck like this. Even though it doesn't look great and it's not great on paper, if everyone's got a sealed deck, it really comes down to who evaluates their deck the best and finds out what their deck is meant to do, right? So let's look at their synergies and anti-synergies here. We have some positive synergies with the Harbinger Doom since we have a low creature count. So that's something. And we have Obsidian Forge also, which really adds the most amount to having that there. Anything else here? We have the mug. We have things that capture amber, so that's a benefit. The Obsidian Forge is a negative 100 synergy because we have a low creature count. So it does not. It probably won't ever get its Forge a Key thing unless we just get really lucky and our opponent has no board control whatsoever and they don't want to fight ever. Then in that case, and we get all 13 or 14 of our creatures out, we can maybe use that, but it's not going to happen 99% of the time. So not a thing we can rely on. We have the Overrun, and because we have low total creature power, we have another anti-synergy there. The Cybergiant Rig is really good with the Good Fight, which we have a few creatures that are good at fighting. So it counts the Umbra, even though the Umbra only has 2 power, so it would only get 1 power from it. So I don't know if I agree with that, but the rest of them have at least 5, I think. So I think that'll be good. Let's see, anything else? We have the Inspector, things that destroy friendly creatures, has good. The Ragwarg is minus 80 because we have things with good reap abilities like Lilithal, Avinda, and Javinda. So that is a very big anti-synergy as we thought. The Barn Raising, low creature count, of course, so we have that anti-synergy to worry about. And I think that's pretty much it. So we were pretty accurate about that. I think we're getting pretty good at guessing these things. I mean, it's pretty easy with Brobnar because, you know, it's unfortunate with Worlds Collide Brobnar. They really missed the mark, I think, overall. Power scaling them. I guess they just weren't sure what to do with them overall. More often than not, when I open a Brobnar deck in Worlds Collide, I get one similar to this. I mean, this is pretty extravagant in how bad it is because it only has 3 creatures in it, where Brobnar really rely on creatures. If you had a Brobnar pod with 12 creatures in it, that'd be perfect, right? I think any pod with 12 creatures would be pretty cool. But anyway, yeah. So what was your guess? Go ahead and leave that down in the comments. And if you like this video, I'd appreciate a like. And if you want to see more of this content, please subscribe.